Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on VodTalk. So today we will be discussing a very important topic, especially in society today, which is the clash of identity with religious and or cultural backgrounds. This is put into practice a lot in our society, especially in the UK, and makes a lot of our youth question their identity at times. So to start off, you guys, what is integration and assimilation to you?
So Mushtaq, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So to me, so I'm going to give like a bit of background. So in our society, especially being from a BAME background and from an ethnic minority background, although the area is diverse, we are still minority, and we still kind of feel as though we have to follow a set norm and values. And this then leads us to feel as though we should assimilate, which is where we feel as though in order to thrive, we must neglect our culture and religious identity. This is an issue as it makes us question our identity, as when we go to school, we change ourselves in order to fit in. And when we go home, we're in a completely different environment, which is ultimately another massive struggle. So in order to like kind of integrate, we must kind of like make a balance. That's kind of a struggle because we don't know which identity kind of follow. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Halimah, what were you going to say?
So personally, for me, integration and assimilation is the process whereby a person or people are combining their different ethnic minorities into one sort of shared culture. So, for example, the British culture that we all have in the UK. However, this might be an issue because people are like forced to neglect their own individuality, and their own like culture. So, for example, personally, like my Indian culture, I sometimes neglect that side and focus on the British side of things because I don't want to be seen as obviously I don't want to be seen as weird or like abnormal in society. So therefore I have to try and neglect that side of me and just focus on the British side to be seen as more competent and more interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's a lot of stereotypes that goes along with ethnic minorities, and to fit in, you need to like conform and be like everyone else. So it's hard to keep your own root, your own values. So have you guys had any previous experiences where you've had to assimilate in order to fit in?
So I'd say one massive experience that I feel like each of us go through is wearing the headscarf. So when I was younger, I'd wear the headscarf and I thought it was normal. I thought like a lot of people wore it and stuff. But then when I went into primary school, I realized that, hey, not a lot of people are wearing it. Why am I the only one wearing it? And it kind of made me question that, well, we're not all the same. And should I follow the norms and values of the British culture, or should I follow my religious identity and be myself?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly what Mushtaq said. So like traditional and like religious assimilation. So wearing like traditional clothing at school sometimes it might be seen as a bit weird. Like people look at you a bit weirdly, like why are you wearing that? So it makes you kind of like you have to try and like forget about that side of you, and like you have to just wear like westernized clothing in order to fit in, which is really, I think that's the problem because you're kind of forgetting that like that part of you is being forgotten, and you just basically like you have to try and conform to these rules and standards of today. So the westernized standard, and if you're seen as anything different, you're seen as weird, or like people don't want to be friends with you. People don't really want to associate with you. And another example would be like the niqab, for example. People see that as really weird, and they obviously think that you're like a terrorist or whatever if you do wear that, whereas that is completely not the case. So we need some more awareness on these issues, and we need to be able to understand why people wear the hijab or niqab, for example, and like educate others on the issue, and to ensure that we have like less racial prejudice and discrimination in our society, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like, especially for me, my experience, my primary school, I was the only Muslim girl in my year. And there were 2 other guys, but that was it in my entire year. And I feel like, especially with the time, because my area wasn't very diverse. But now I look at my younger sister's class, and there's a lot more diversity and a lot more ethnic background, stuff like that. So I feel like, especially with the older generations, it was harder being like first class immigrants, stuff like that, because there was no one else that you could like relate to or look up to as like a role model. So I think that also affected us. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you were saying, like the first generation, they probably had it really hard because obviously, like they were the first generation of immigrants coming through. They probably faced a lot of discrimination and hatred, racism, and I feel like we still do have it easily because obviously we're not the first people to face this sort of harassment. But I feel like it's still an issue, and we need to focus. We need to address this issue and try and like tackle it as best as we can, because I feel like there isn't a lot of like awareness on this issue, so it's important to address it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, I'd also like to say that, well, because obviously what Halim was saying, because we tend to have a clash in our identities and stuff like that, it kind of leads to people feeling segregated and feeling as though they're unable to fit in the society they're in, and that kind of leads them to kind of assimilate and change their identity in order to fit in, because they feel like this is what's normal, and their own culture and identity is not what they see fit in that particular society and stuff.
Yeah. Going back to the niqabi point, not niqab point. I know a lot of people, they're afraid of what they don't understand, what they don't know. So I feel like education is powerful and it can go a long way. So educating people and having these conversations that are often pushed under the rug and classed as taboo is very important. And that just not even just our generation, like intergenerational, it opens a lot of debate and people become more comfortable with the idea. So yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah, so how do you think our society enforces assimilation and stuff like that into practice?
So should I start? Okay.
Yeah, you
So I think it's especially evident in schools, because especially in secondary schools, we're told to dress a certain way. We're told to dress in uniform, blazers, especially like schools now. I think there was over like a decade ago, maybe we weren't wearing blazers, ties and stuff like that, but then we started to wear blazers, ties and stuff, and it kind of is an issue as it disregards culture. So for example, the way I dress, like mainly I may dress in abaya, I may dress in my cultural clothing, and then that would be seen as, hey, you can't wear that, you have to wear what we tell you to wear and wear that. And it kind of disregards the fact that, hey, well, I wear it a certain, like I wear these, if I wear these clothes, I won't necessarily feel like I'm in a sort of like I feel like I'll have a clash with my identity, because when I get home, I'm not dressed like that. I'm not socialized into that culture that the school has taught us, especially the fact that we're expected to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, especially like speak professionally and stuff like that. And when we go into the professional world and stuff like that, we're expected to be like that, and we feel as though like in order to thrive we must be like that, and that is how schools are beginning to socialize us into.
Yeah, exactly. As you were saying, I think like education, primary education and secondary education is like a massive factor when socializing children and kids into that sort of like one sort of mold. Like they have to forget about their identity and their background, and they just have to focus on their education and trying to like, you know, be the best that they can be. And I feel like there's another thing which is language assimilation, which is they have to learn the specific language which is taught in school. So that's English, for example, like in our society. So I feel like if they speak a different language at home, they might be obviously it might be hard for them to like have that identity on the side, because obviously they might be speaking a different language at home, and then at school they might be having to learn English, and they might not always want to do that, which is also another problem of assimilation and integration, because you're forcing people to go against what they want, to ensure that they conform to society and the rules of society.
Yeah. And also I've noticed, like, especially in school when I'm doing sociology, you learn about how people who have English as a second language find the education system harder. And I feel like that shouldn't really be a thing. It shouldn't really affect you having English as the first or second or third language. So I feel like language barriers as well. Like, I know personally I'm not the best at my first language as I wish I could be, and I feel like that's because my parents ended up speaking a lot more English because that's what we had to learn for school. So I feel like that's really important, being able to keep your roots and not having to get rid of them to conform.
Exactly, yeah. As I was going to say, like your point, for me, I had to kind of like neglect my side as well. Like I didn't really know my language as I should, like as I wanted to. And it's kind of sad, like looking back, obviously, like when I was a child, like obviously I was like, yeah, English is the best and everything. I should learn English. But now I feel like I want to learn my own culture, like my own language, because that is a part of me and that's my culture. And I feel like the fact that I didn't learn it is kind of like that part of me is being taken away. And obviously that is due to assimilation and integration, because my parents were like, just learn English because it'll help you with in so many different ways. And it kind of makes you think like, why is English the dominant culture? Why does it have to be the dominant language? Like, why can't it be another language? So it makes you think about this, and you have to look about like you have to look at history and like obviously colonialism and capitalism, all these sorts of different things which will influence us, like assimilation and integration in society. So yeah, that's what I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like, especially since older generations, they don't tend to speak a lot of English. So that causes more of a gap between the generations. You don't have much of an understanding of each other. You don't know each other because you don't even speak the same language. So even in your own family, there's a lot of gaps and different like barriers as well.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I feel like if you're lacking in one area, so for example, like you're lacking in school, but you're also going to be lacking at home because you don't know your own home language. So it's
Yeah.
like, where can you win? Like, it's not a win-win situation. It's kind of like a lose-lose situation.
It's
Think
different.
about it.
Really different.
Yeah.
So how do you think that all of this affects you as a young person? How, does it make you question your identity? Like, has it put you in a situation where you don't understand like who you are?
Halimah, you can start.
Okay. So I feel like for me, when I was younger, I did have like quite a big identity crisis. Like I always thought like, oh my God, if I was white, I would have been like much better, like, being the traditional, like what's it called? The norm, like being white, like you have so much privilege and everything. And now obviously I question that. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be a different sort of race to what I am now, because obviously that's like my own culture, my own identity. And I feel like these issues, like there are so many different issues like this, because obviously in the media we don't really see that much representation as we should do. Like we should have more representation in media, in books, in schools. So I feel like this is an issue, and it has caused me a lot of like identity crisis, which I'm still trying to sort out and figure out. But yeah, I think I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
I'd say it's especially evident from when you go from your home and you're in a particular culture, you socialize in a different way, and then you go into school and it's this extreme different environment. So you consider like, which way do I kind of change myself to be? Like if I change myself to fit into school and then I go home and I change myself, who am I as an individual? Like, am I part of what school wants me to be, or am I part of my own culture and what I was raised to be? And you kind of create a clash in identity, because which one do I follow? Do I follow that to gain a better future, or a better future because it is told that if you speak a certain way you get better, a better job and stuff like that. But it's really not like that, because at the end of the day, you're able to stay in your own particular roots and stuff, but also you can fit into the norms and values of the school in a way.
Exactly. Like I feel like you shouldn't have to like sacrifice one or the other just to be like successful or popular or whatever, because
Yeah.
like at the end of the day that is part of us. And I feel like if we, due to assimilation and integration, like people have multiple personalities, which isn't that great. Like, so for example, if you're at home you have one personality, and if you're at school you have another. And I feel like it shouldn't be that way. Like people should just accept you as who you are, as the whole, instead of having multiple personalities per se.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to Mushtaq's point about school uniform, you realize like a lot of schools aren't really tolerant of different cultures. So, for example, I'm aware of many schools that don't accept like Afro-styled hair, or like certain colored hijabs, or certain colored braids, and I feel like that's really negatively impacting young people, because they're like, okay, well that's who I am, and how are you supposed to change the type of hair you have? Or people use the hijab to express themselves, because obviously we don't have our hair out. So I feel like that sort of stuff, it hinders a child. And if schools were more accepting of different people and stuff like that, it'd be more harmoniously, like more of a community, and that'd be another place where the child can express themselves more freely, because like obviously in the house you might not be able to do that.
Yeah. Also leading to your point, like I literally have this like a experience of that. So in my old school, we weren't allowed to wear like maxi skirts because apparently they were like a safety hazard or something. But I don't understand because like they're literally like an item of clothing. So I don't know how that is going to cause someone like a safety issue, because they would literally let people wear whatever they want. Like they would let them wear like short skirts or long, like medium skirts, but they wouldn't allow maxi skirts. And I feel like it was kind of like a issue like with invalidating people's like what they want to wear and their modesty. And obviously that's an issue. So we need to address it, but schools don't really want to at times.
Yeah. In my secondary school, when we got to year, I think they put in this rule, because all the girls were wearing different size skirts, that you either had to wear trousers or the school skirt. And it obviously modestly, I have to wear a skirt to my ankles, or like it has to be long and like not really form fitting. So it wasn't very helpful, and it just made everything 10 times harder. And there was a lot of clashes between teachers and students, because there wasn't a very good understanding of where people were coming from, in the sense that they wanted to dress a certain way because that's how they felt comfortable. So
Exactly.
I was also going to say, with the short skirts, so in our school, they told us that we had to wear a short skirt or a normal uniform, and everyone had to wear that skirt. And they didn't necessarily introduce a long skirt till a month later, when they saw that there is an issue. But in the first month, I was questioning, like, how am I going to pray with the short skirt? Like, I'm unable to pray, especially even if I wear trousers. I couldn't pray with trousers because I couldn't find any straight leg trousers at the time. So I couldn't necessarily pray my salah, and at that time it did create a religious like clash in identity, because I couldn't necessarily worship my God at the same time, as well as conform to the school's values. Am I going to conform to school values and then go home and worship my God? Because at the same time, it is kind of difficult to kind of do both, because you can't necessarily pray in a short skirt, and especially if you want to dress modestly, and that's a way to like show people like, this is who I am. You can't really do that with the skirt that they told us to wear at that time.
And an issue is, sorry, you go first.
No, it's okay, go on.
An issue is, I feel like it's really weird because they preach tolerance, like schools preach tolerance and acceptance and individuality, diversity. But then again, they're also doing these things where they don't allow us to express ourselves. So it doesn't make any sense to me. Like if they really are wanting to preach like diversity, inclusivity, like they should be allowing us to wear what we want, which for example might be long skirts or a different color hijab, instead of just like confining us to these different colors and lengths. They should just allow us to wear whatever we want. Because it's not really affecting our education. So
especially with young people already, like teenagers, they're already stuck in this limbo between childhood and adulthood, and then you add these other different issues into the mix. The young person is really overwhelmed with all these things, and it's hard. You're trying to find yourself as a person with all these other outside influences from home, from school, friends, from social media, and it's really hard to find balance and be as a person.
Exactly, yeah. Also, I feel like there's another issue with like the whole thing about like beauty standards and all that sort of thing, because like obviously in school, people are going to be pressured to fit into like a specific beauty standard, and by obviously not allowing us to express ourselves with like, you know, the way we want to wear our hijab or like our outfits or, you know, whatever, our skirts, that's also creating another issue, because obviously like we have to conform at the end of the day, even though we don't want to conform, we have to conform, and that's an issue. And I feel like schools, they don't address it, they just brush it off as, oh, like people are just rebelling, like they just don't want to listen to schools, you have to dress a certain way to be seen as professional, but they don't understand that there are different people that think differently, and they need to address this issue.
Yes, 100%. So what advice would you give young people to do, like if they ever feel like this, and how do you think that we could raise awareness on this issue?
I'd say always try to maintain your roots and never ever feel like you have to change yourself in order to fit in.
Yeah, exactly what Mushtaq said, like accept yourself like as who you are, because I mean, you're amazing, you're unique. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. Like, yes, so we should just accept ourselves as who we are. And at the end of the day, we're all amazing, different, and yeah. And also, we need to have more like acceptance and awareness of different cultures, because I feel like in school we don't even learn about different cultures at all. Like the only way like we learn about other cultures is probably asking our friends. So I feel like we need to have like different days in schools or different like assemblies or something where they, you know, teach us about different people, or we have like different cultural days where people come in and talk about their own experiences that they've had, or their different cultures. Like we need more awareness on different cultures.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like I know that even in history, you don't really learn a lot about different groups of people, different religious groups or cultures. Like I wouldn't have known that in World War II, a lot of because of the British Empire, a lot of India and Africa were helping in the war.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have known that if I didn't do my own research and go find out, especially because I
exactly.
as GCSE, the syllabus wasn't the only part of that you'd get any ethnic minority was when we learned about the civil rights movement. And obviously that's negative. So you weren't learning about positive people, or obviously it's a positive thing, but what was happening to Black people in America wasn't a good thing. It was lots.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I feel like painting young people with that sort of idea of their people isn't really good, because they're going to feel like, well, that's how I'm perceived, but I'm not perceived in any other way. So how are you supposed to? You can't really. It's hard. It's really
I
hard.
understand. Yeah, I get you. Like we don't really learn about like the positives of our culture, or like the impacts that they've had. Like we just learn about things that have happened. So we don't even learn about like imperialism, colonialism. I feel like we should, because that's a massive part in understanding your own identity, because that makes you question like, why should I just like conform to these British values? Like maybe I should just be my own person, because at the end of the day, like it's who I am.
Yeah.
So we need to learn about, we need to, like I feel like in the education system and the whole curriculum, we need to have more diversity in what we learn, because like as you said, in history we literally just learn about the British history, and it isn't even the correct version of the history. Like we just learn about the Tudors and some other things like that aren't really that relevant to today. So we should learn about things that are actually important and relevant, that we can, you know, use to like apply it to our lives basically.
Yeah, and I feel like if the education system was more engaging in doing topics and subjects that affect young people today, then most young people will be positive. They'll be have a more positive outlook on education, and they'll be more engaging and more enthusiastic in lessons. So I feel like that's also a really good impact. So
Yeah,
if we were
exactly.
decide to, just change up a bit.
Yeah, we do really need to change it up, because it's like boring. It's
Yeah,
boring and it's like uninteresting, and people don't really want to learn about these sorts of things. So they should change it to fit to our like what we want to learn. But
yeah,
they don't.
exactly. Yeah. So, do you have any final thoughts on this topic?
I just want to say it's a really interesting topic, and we do need a lot more, like we need a bit more involvement from schools and from different communities into learning about integration and assimilation, and how to make that a positive change. Instead of making it into something that's negative, we should make it into something that's positive, that
Yeah.
will impact our communities and children positively.
Okay. Thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
And for everyone watching, we have come to the end of today's episode, and we hope you have enjoyed watching this just as much as we have enjoyed making this. The topic of assimilation and integration leads to many struggles, and raising awareness would benefit many young people, as they would feel that they have someone to understand them. Please continue to join us on Youth Fluent on VodTalk to raise more awareness. Like, subscribe, share, and comment on YouTube. Follow VodTalk on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Bye!